The Codes That Haunt America, 1968 to 1974. The cipher begins. July 5th, 1969, just after midnight. A quiet stretch of road near Blue Rock Springs Park, Vallejo, California. The kind of night where the only sound is the hum of insects and the occasional echo of a passing car. A young couple sits in a parked vehicle, their laughter breaking the silence. Moments later, that peace is shattered by gunfire. 5 rounds, then 2 more for certainty. When officers arrive, the scene is chaos. A 19-year-old woman, Darlene Farron, lies motionless in the driver's seat. Next to her, 22-year-old Mike Mageau, bleeding heavily but alive, clings to consciousness. Between gasps, he mutters something that chills the officers. He had a flashlight and a gun. He didn't say a word. He just kept shooting. The Vallejo Police Department had seen its share of violence, but nothing like this. There was no robbery, no assault, just precision. Cold intent. Detective Ed Rust, one of the first on scene, couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't random. The shooter knew what he was doing and wanted someone to know it too. 2 days later, that suspicion became reality. At the Vallejo Times-Herald, a plain white envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a neatly typed letter and a hand-drawn symbol, a circle with a cross through it. The letter began calmly, almost politely. I am the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas and the girl on the 4th of July. Attached was a cipher. 408 characters of strange symbols, triangles, and circles. The writer demanded the code be published on the front page of the paper, or he would cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night. The newsroom froze. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Detached, intelligent. Someone was playing a game, and the entire Bay Area had just been invited to play along. Within hours, the letter was verified. The details too accurate to fake. Law enforcement called it the work of a new kind of predator. The press gave him a name that would echo for decades: the Zodiac Killer. The days that followed were a blur of panic and fascination. Newspapers published the cipher as instructed, and armchair detectives across the country tried to break it. Some believed it was random nonsense. Others thought it hid a confession. Then, a week later, a high school teacher and his wife in Salinas cracked part of the code. The hidden message wasn't what anyone expected. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. There was no name, no clear motive, just that word, fun. For investigators, it wasn't just about murder anymore. This was control. He didn't just want to kill. He wanted to be seen, feared, and remembered. Months later, another attack. September 27th, 1969. Lake Berryessa. 2 college students, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, were picnicking near the water when a man approached wearing an executioner-style hood. On his chest, the same crossed circle symbol. He held a knife and a gun. Calmly, he tied them both up, then stabbed them repeatedly before walking away. Before leaving, he scrawled a message on Brian's car door. Vallejo, 12-20-68, 7469, Seppi 2769, 6:30, by knife. When police arrived, Cecilia was still breathing. She managed to describe the attacker's outfit in haunting detail before falling unconscious. Hours later, she was gone. And just like before, the phone at the Napa County Sheriff's Office rang. The voice on the line was calm, male, and emotionless. I want to report a murder. No, a double murder. They are 2 miles north of park headquarters. I'm the one who did it. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Shootings, stab, bings, letters, Phone calls, all tied together by the same taunting signature. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. Reporters began to receive more letters, each one stranger than the last. He bragged about the murders, mocked the police, and threatened to attack a school bus next. His letters grew darker, signed simply, "This is the Zodiac speaking." The tone became more theatrical, filled with symbols and codes that no one could decipher. He demanded attention, feeding off the fear he'd created. The Bay Area became paralyzed. Parents pulled their kids from buses, people stopped driving at night, and the press was flooded with tips from terrified citizens. But for every lead, there were dead ends. Witness sketches were vague. Fingerprints didn't match. Suspects were questioned, cleared, and forgotten. One suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, would later become infamous. He lived near one of the crime scenes, owned a Zodiac brand watch with the same symbol, and had a history of disturbing behavior. But in 1969, none of it was enough to tie him to the murders. Detective Dave Toschi, a sharp, restless investigator with the San Francisco Police Department, became obsessed with catching the killer. He analyzed every letter, every word, every symbol. The pressure on him grew unbearable. The media dubbed Zodiac the man who turned murder into a puzzle. And Toschi was running out of time. Then another envelope. This one addressed to the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside, a piece of bloody fabric and another message. "This is the Zodiac speaking. I am the murderer of the taxi driver over by Washington Saint and Maple Saint last night." The letter referred to the killing of 29-year-old cab driver Paul Stein, shot in the head in Presidio Heights. Witnesses saw the killer wipe the car clean and walk away, calmly, deliberately, as police sirens wailed nearby. A patrol car even stopped a man matching the description but let him go after assuming he was a civilian. The fabric was confirmed to be torn from Stein's shirt. Zodiac had done it again, and he was mocking them from within the city itself. By late 1969, San Francisco was on edge. The killer was no longer confined to remote lovers' lanes. He was walking city streets, blending into crowds, sending letters that began to feel almost supernatural in their reach. Each new note brought more symbols, more taunts, and new codes that even military cryptographers struggled to understand. He bragged about eluding capture, calling the police slaves of the press. In one letter, he claimed he'd left clues to his identity hidden in the ciphers. But when experts pieced them together, the message was fragmented, incomplete. Some believed he was deliberately misleading investigators. Others thought he was daring them to catch up. Then came one final twist in that first year of terror. A small, unnoticed detail, buried in a letter sent in December 1969. It mentioned a bomb he'd supposedly buried near a school bus route. But when the FBI mapped the coordinates scrawled beneath the threat, they realized something chilling. The coordinates didn't point to a school. They pointed to Mount Diablo, a place known for its panoramic view of the entire Bay Area. A place from which someone could watch every city he'd attacked. Detective Toschi stared at the map, his cigarette trembling. The code wasn't just words, it was geography. The killer was drawing a circle of his own, and they were all inside it. But when the next letter arrived weeks later, something inside the envelope would change everything. The letters of fear. January 1970. The Bay Area slept uneasy. The Zodiac Killer had vanished for weeks, and for a brief moment, the city believed the nightmare was over. But Detective Dave Toschi knew better. He'd seen this pattern before. Silence, followed by spectacle. Then, it happened. A new letter arrived at the San Francisco Examiner. It began, as always, "This is the Zodiac speaking." This time, though, there was no cipher. Instead, there was arrogance. He mocked the police for wearing badges of failure. He claimed to have made a bomb, and enclosed a diagram that looked disturbingly plausible. He drew circuits, wires, and a trigger mechanism, explaining how he'd used the bus bomb to blow up children. But investigators noticed something different. This wasn't just madness. It was engineering. Whoever he was, he had knowledge of explosives, schematics, and precision. The bomb was never found, but the threat had done its job. The city was paralyzed again. Weeks turned into months. The letters kept coming, each one colder, each one more taunting. He began to write about his score, a grotesque tally of victims, numbers that didn't match any known cases. Some detectives thought he was bluffing. Others feared there were bodies that hadn't yet been discovered. One letter sent to the Chronicle in April 1970 carried a strange message. It read, "My name is," followed by 13 symbols no one could decode. Beneath it, a circle with a cross through it. And then, "I am mildly curious as to how much money you have on my head now." It was a sick game of ego and control, and he was winning. Every newspaper headline, every FBI report, every late-night broadcast carried his mark. The Zodiac had turned terror into theater. Detective Toshi and his partner, Bill Armstrong, began pulling in every lead they could. They scoured military records, cipher clubs, and psychiatric profiles. They even reached out to linguists, hoping someone could find patterns in his syntax. That's when they noticed something strange. Each letter had a rhythm, deliberate spelling errors, repeated phrases, and an odd obsession with punctuation. He wasn't random. He was calculated. FBI analysts began to suspect Zodiac might be educated, possibly with training in cryptography or military intelligence. His references to radians, Mount Diablo, and killing by flashlight weren't just theatrics. They were breadcrumbs. One lead pointed to a man named Arthur Lee Allen, a former schoolteacher with a fascination for ciphers and a disturbing record. He had once told friends he wanted to hunt people. He owned a Zodiac brand wristwatch. He lived near the Vallejo attacks. Toski's gut screamed it was him. But the evidence refused to cooperate. Fingerprints didn't match. Handwriting analysis was inconclusive. Polygraph tests meant nothing to a man who knew how to lie. And still, the letters kept coming. In June 1970, Zodiac sent a letter demanding front-page coverage again. This time, threatening to target a random school bus if his message wasn't printed. The Chronicle complied. Parents refused to send their kids to school for days. Police cruisers followed buses like armed escorts. But then, something new arrived. A map. A hand-drawn map of the Bay Area, marked with a crosshair centered on Mount Diablo, the same location from the earlier coordinates. Attached was another cipher, this one shorter, more complex. He called it the bomb code. The FBI and the Navy's cryptography unit tried everything. They rotated it, mirrored it, even ran it through machine analysis. Nothing worked. It was as if the code itself was laughing back at them. Then, months later, another message came. The map coupled with this code will tell you where the bomb is. But the solution made no sense. The map wasn't pointing to a location. It was pointing to an angle. An angle measured in radians. It was a mathematical term few civilians understood. Zodiac had used it deliberately. A hidden taunt to the educated. A way to show he was smarter than the ones chasing him. Summer turned to fall. By October 1970, the Zodiac had become more than a killer. He was a brand of fear. Every anonymous call, every note on a doorstep, every man seen writing in a cafe was reported as him. That month, another letter arrived, this one mocking Toshi directly. "I have grown rather angry with the police for their telling lies about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner." The arrogance bled through every word. But hidden in the text was something the public missed. A reference to collecting slaves for the afterlife. It wasn't random delusion. It was belief. The Zodiac wasn't just killing for pleasure. He thought he was building a legacy that would outlive death itself. Toshi started seeing the case everywhere. He'd wake in the middle of the night to phantom phone rings. His desk was buried in clippings, letters, and sketches. Even his wife worried he was losing himself. Then came a break, or what looked like one. A man named Don Chaney came forward, claiming his friend Arthur Lee Allen once bragged about wanting to call himself Zodiac. He'd even described taping flashlights to guns, killing couples, and sending letters to newspapers. It sounded perfect. Too perfect. Police raided Allen's home, finding knives, books on ciphers, and a disturbing amount of pornography. But again, no direct evidence. No gun, no blood, no matching prints. Zodiac had either covered his tracks flawlessly, or Allen wasn't the man they thought he was. In early 1971, another message arrived, this time sent to the Los Angeles Times. I do have to give them credit for stumbling across my Riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there. He was referencing Riverside, California, where years earlier, a young college student named Cherry Jo Bates had been murdered near a library. Her killer had left behind a typed confession letter, eerily similar in tone to Zodiac's early writings. Police began connecting the dots. Could this be his first victim? If so, it meant Zodiac had been active before anyone realized. Maybe long before. The fear spread beyond the Bay Area. Los Angeles, Sacramento, even Nevada. Every unsolved case from the 1960s was suddenly under review. By the end of 1971, Zodiac's messages grew sporadic. Shorter, stranger, like fragments of a fading voice. Some contained drawings of bombs. Others made crude jokes. A few were signed with fake names, confusing investigators about whether the real Zodiac was still out there or if copycats had joined the chaos. But then, in January 1974, he resurfaced one last time. The letter began with praise. For The Exorcist. I saw and think it is the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen. And then, once again, that symbol. Me Eol 37, SFPD X0. 37 kills. No proof, no closure. Just numbers that didn't fit, and a confidence that made detectives sick. Detective Toshi stared at the letter under his desk lamp. The handwriting was the same. Careful, slanted, confident. But something was missing. The energy, the precision, the fury. This wasn't the same Zodiac. It felt like someone pretending to be him, or worse, someone carrying on his legacy. The letters stopped. The calls stopped. The killings stopped. But the fear never did. Then, 6 months later, a postal clerk sorting old mail in a San Francisco substation found something wedged between two filing boxes. An unmailed letter. No stamp. No address. Just a crosshair symbol drawn in thick black ink. When investigators opened it, the writing was smeared, but one line was still clear. Next time, they won't find the code. Detective Toshi's hands trembled. If this letter was real, it meant one thing. Zodiac had never stopped. He'd just changed his game. The man behind the cipher. The San Francisco Police Department was exhausted. Years of dead ends, taunting letters, and false confessions had turned the Zodiac case into a black hole, swallowing careers, reputations, and sleep. Detective Dave Toshi sat at his desk one late evening, staring at the newest file labeled inactive. It didn't feel over. It just felt quiet. The press had moved on. The city healed. The fear faded. But for those who lived through it, the shadow of the crosshair symbol still lingered. Toski couldn't let it go, and deep down, he didn't believe Zodiac was done. In 1978, 4 years after the last confirmed letter, another one arrived. This is the Zodiac speaking. I am back with you. The words were familiar, but something about the handwriting was off. Experts analyzed every stroke, every curve, and something didn't fit. It was too careful, too neat. The letter was later deemed a forgery, possibly written by someone inside law enforcement or the press, desperate to keep the case alive. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Rumors spread that Zodiac was back, and Toshi, the lead detective, suddenly became a suspect. An internal investigation accused him of writing fake Zodiac letters to reignite interest in the case. The idea was absurd, but the evidence, his access to files, his handwriting, his obsession, made him look guilty. Toshi was transferred out of homicide. His career, like the case, was effectively over. The man who had devoted his life to catching the Zodiac had become another casualty of the killer's legacy. The Zodiac didn't just outsmart the police. He broke them. Years passed. The Bay Area changed, but the fascination didn't. Books, movies, and documentaries kept the story alive, each promising the final truth, but delivering only more questions. And yet, the letters never completely stopped. Verified ones surfaced in the 1980s and 1990s. Some crude imitations, others eerily convincing. One read simply, "Hello again. Remember me? I was never caught, because I was never there." Investigators couldn't tell if it was Zodiac or someone feeding off his myth, but the thought of him still out there, older, quiet, watching, haunted everyone who had touched the case. Then came the age of technology. In the early 2000s, DNA testing had revolutionized cold cases. The San Francisco Police Department decided to re-examine the old Zodiac letters, hoping that saliva on the stamps or envelope flaps could finally reveal a genetic fingerprint. The results shocked them. Some letters contained DNA, but not from one person. At least 2 profiles were found, neither matching any suspect. It suggested what detectives feared most. The Zodiac might not have been just one man. Or worse, someone had helped him send the letters. Attention turned again to Arthur Lee Allen. He was dead by then, having suffered a heart attack in 1992. But even in death, he remained the prime suspect. Search warrants had uncovered a typewriter matching certain letters. He'd owned guns similar to those used in the attacks. And yet, DNA from the envelopes didn't match him. Investigators were forced to face an impossible truth. Allen could have been innocent, or Zodiac was far more meticulous than anyone imagined. In 2007, decades after the first murders, the case saw a flicker of light. A team of independent cryptologists began re-examining the unsolved ciphers, including the infamous 340-character code sent in November 1969. A message experts had failed to decode for over 50 years. For years, the 340 code was treated like a taunt. But in 2020, a team of codebreakers from the US, Australia, and Belgium announced they had finally cracked it. The decrypted message read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me." There was no name, no location, just more mockery. Even after half a century, the Zodiac was still winning. Detective Toshi never lived to see the message decoded. He died in 2018, the same year DNA evidence caught the Golden State Killer, another California murderer who had eluded police for decades. That success rekindled hope. Maybe Zodiac could be next. In 2021, a group of cold case investigators known as the Casebreakers made headlines. They claimed to have identified the Zodiac as Gary Francis Poste, a former Air Force serviceman and house painter who died in 2018. They pointed to scars on his forehead resembling marks seen in police sketches, a darkroom where he developed film, and even a confession from a woman who said she'd fled his Zodiac cult. The story went viral, but law enforcement wasn't convinced. The evidence was circumstantial, not DNA, not definitive. The FBI responded simply, "The Zodiac case remains open and unsolved." So what does that mean? It means somewhere, in a locked evidence box, lies a handful of envelopes, yellowed by time, sealed with the DNA of a man who played chess with the world and walked away undefeated. It means that for every suspect cleared, another emerges. It means every time someone thinks they've solved it, the cipher twists again. And for those who lived through it, the terror wasn't just that Zodiac killed people. It was that he made the world watch. He turned fear into fame, murder into communication. In 2025, more than half a century after the first murder, the Zodiac's symbols still haunt message boards, documentaries, and conspiracy forums. Every year, someone new claims to have cracked the final code. Every year, someone else finds a new suspect. But the truth is simpler and far more terrifying. Zodiac's greatest crime wasn't the murders. It was how he made millions of people question what evil looks like. He wasn't a monster in the shadows. He was the man behind a letter, the stranger in a crowd, the face that never stood out. And that's why he got away. One last letter still sits unsolved in FBI archives. A short message from the 1970s, marked Z13. It begins with 13 symbols, then a chilling line. "My name is..." The codebreakers never found an answer. Maybe it's hidden in plain sight. Maybe it never meant anything. Or maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth when he said, "I was never there." And if you think this story was dark, the next one will make you question every face you see on your street. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and remember, some mysteries don't die. They wait.